Okay. Um, Hi, I am here with my jiu-jitsu coach and owner of Evolve Training Center, Coach Shay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah. I just want to kind of hear more about your story, your jiu-jitsu journey, kind of your perspective on things. But yeah, like just to start, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South San Francisco, where the gym is currently located, and born and raised, and so it just seemed really fitting to kind of plant our flag here and kind of give back to the community.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you grew up. You said you went to school like right around here.
Yeah, I went to high school right there, cut classes, and went to 7-Eleven and ate Taco Bell. And this location actually was a furniture store.
Really?
And so we were in South San Francisco during COVID on Spruce, about 2 blocks down. And our facility was about 6,000 square feet. And when everyone started closing down, we couldn't really settle things with the landlords. And so we came here and got something twice as big. It was really risky at the time, but Coach Mark, my business partner, and myself, we believed in our product. We had faith in, what we were doing, and we took a gamble. A lot of people, quit their membership, rightfully so, but there was also people that were really supportive, and we continued to pay our staff. And so it's really kind of turned into something beautiful over here. So
Wow. Wow. Okay. What was your childhood like growing up?
um, there's many ways that we can go with it. My dad did judo. He was a black belt,
Oh, wow. Okay.
competed. Yeah. And so I got into judo early. I enjoyed it. It's kind of a rough little kid, but I kind of put judo on the back burner to do a lot of the glamour sports in you know, little leagues and, football and baseball and stuff like that. But, growing up, supportive family, always doing sports. My mom was the team mom, played baseball and football in various cities. And so you got friends everywhere, stuff like that. Childhood was good family, but I did grow up in an alcoholic environment, which kind of triggers a little bit of anxiety,
Yeah.
for me at times. My dad did quit drinking in 2007, but the anxiety didn't stop in 2007.
Yeah.
And it's just something that, I created as this safe haven for myself. And, as it's kind of it's a battle every day, to deal with like mental health. But, there's always good and bad in everything. But, my dad, he was the coach, super supportive. It's how he grew up too. And so I did my best to break that, what you would want to call a generational curse
Yeah.
in that type of lifestyle. And, like I said, he quit drinking in 2007. And, he always wants to make sure that my sister and myself are okay. And I said, Dad, yeah, you're forgiven. And it's kind of how you end, and so I've never been a person that kind of hanged my head on that. Growing up, my sister and I, we handled the situation differently at home. She was younger, so I felt like I had to take care of her.
Right.
She would go in the room and just kind of read books and stuff like that. And at a young age, I was trying to play peacemaker with my parents. Now, mind you, my parents, they had me at 17.
Wow.
And so my ass didn't come with any directions.
Yeah. Okay. So they were trying to figure this, stuff
And
out.
they literally say, we grew up with you. And so, I would go and try to explain to my dad, Dad, you don't have to drink. You promise not to drink again? Yeah. And then I'd run to my mom. Dad said he's not going to drink anymore. So let's just be patient. And at a young age, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and then the next day we're, you know, playing baseball and going to Round Table Pizza after.
Wow.
And it just became this cycle. You know, holidays were a little rough because when you grow up in something like that and you have anxiety, you live that life of waiting for that left shoe to drop, right? And we would have like a holiday and say it would be Thanksgiving, for instance, and okay, everything was good. And then it's like, okay, well, what about Christmas?
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of what it was. And when you're younger, you don't really understand, you know, you're just in that moment. But as I got older, you realize that alcoholism is a disease, and you kind of have empathy for your parents and things like that. And so, but it's, you know, I wouldn't trade it, really. It really helped me become, you know, the man I am today. And as I said, and I'll say this continually through this podcast, my parents were super supportive. You know, the nice dressing rooms that we have in the back, my dad built. You know, like I said, this was a furniture place. And so everything that I've ever, you know, done in my life, my mom and dad have always, and to this, like I said, to this day, they're still here for me.
Wow.
So I'm beyond blessed for that.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing all that. How did your dad quit drinking?
I think he got to a point in his life where he didn't want to lose his family, you know? And I don't think he really understands, but he might have surrendered a little bit too, you know? And, you know, my dad being a big, tough guy and growing up in a Latin family, I mean, it's all he knew. And so I think he got to a point where kind of what he valued and not wanting to lose. I mean, my sister and I were kind of already out of the house at that point.
I see.
And so, you know, we were kind of far removed from that, but I think he just kind of surrendered everything and just kind of let, you know, the journey take a course of its own.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, you know, it sounds like, you know, you're, like you mentioned, like this generational kind of thing and kind of perhaps this anxiety that was kind of passed on to you because of, you know, what your dad did or what he was doing. What were some of the kind of generational blessings that you got from your dad? Because it sounds like there was a lot. You mentioned he was a judo black belt. Did that show up in any way, or?
Kind of, I mean, just this support, you know, just this mindset, just this way of being. They're blessing. Everything's a blessing and a curse, right? Like, you grow up being able to defend yourself. You know, that's a blessing. You know, honor and respect. But then when you grow up and then you kind of take this course of your own, I lived my life by this honor of, if I respect you, you have to respect me. And if you don't respect me, we have a problem. Because I can come here and shake your hand and be nice to me, but if you're not being nice to me, that doesn't seem right. And it's not like that my dad taught me that or my parents taught me that, but it was like, you stand up for yourself. You know, it isn't until years later where, you know, someone cuts me off and I'll be like, hey, I was giving you the right of way. And the guy flips me off and Coach Jane is like, why are you arguing with him? I said, I'm not arguing with him. I want to tell him that I was giving him the right of way. Well, why do you have to tell him that? Because I feel like I did something nice and he disrespected me. Little did he know, you know, he could have had a gun or I could have choked him out, you know, but those are things that I valued growing up.
Wow.
And so, you know, it ended up that way. You know, one of the things, you know, that my parents taught me was, you know, being part of a team sport and family. And that's what I kind of tried to incorporate here at Evolve, you know, because you have martial arts, that's an individual sport.
Right.
But as you grow up playing baseball and football and those kind of things, you begin to understand what that team concept is. You know, you go out and eat after, you do things with other families. And so I really wanted to bring that into my business. And it's interesting because here at Evolve, there's a lot of families that do things, and Jane and myself, we see them on social media, and it's heartwarming for me. I don't have to be involved in everything.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for Coach Jane and I to have all these relationships with people here. You know, we try to set a little bit of a barrier, you know, so that, I don't want to say that we don't want to get too close, but, you know, we just can't have a relationship with everyone. You know, we have respect and we have business here and we care about them, but we're very happy to see kind of people doing things. And so my family really instilled the family team aspect of things. You know, respect your mother, take care of your sister. You know, kind of like what your role as a man in faith is to, you know, protect your wife, provide, and those kind of things. And
Yeah.
you know, my dad, he did grow up Catholic, but he didn't really kind of preach those kind of things. But it's something that, you know, he kind of took on, you know, even at the age of 17, you know, to provide. And that was one of the things with my dad, you know, rain or shine, whether he had drank or not, he was always at work. And so that was something for me. You know, you're up early in the morning, you take your shower, and your day has to start. And you know, for me later on, as I became a trainer, when you call in sick, you just have to call your boss. But when I had 6 or 7 clients, I had to call 6 or 7 clients to say, hey, I can't make it today.
Right.
And that was just too much for me. And so,
Yeah.
so that's why I kind of had that good work ethic, and those are the kind of things that were kind of given to me by my parents.
That's awesome. Wow. And so, like, how did you find jujitsu? It sounded like did your dad teach you judo or?
My dad taught me judo. Mitchell Palacio, who is, he runs the City College judo program, super tough guy, very close with my dad. And his father, Ben Palacio, was my judo coach as well. So my dad brought me there, and then, you know, Sensei Ben was my coach. And obviously, you know, we would do things at the house with my dad and myself. But like I said, I kind of put judo on the back burner a little bit because I wanted to pursue these other cool things, you know, that kids were doing. And lo and behold, this is how I provide for myself and my family these days. And so it just kind of came back. Do I regret not sticking with it all the way through? I mean, I was able to, you know, go and, you know, I've attained my black belt, you know, judo black belt. And so it's great, you know, but this is just how things kind of panned out for me, you know.
Wow. Wait, so your dad was working full time, providing for a family, and still training judo, or
he would go at night and
go at night
and train and you know, things like that. I mean, it was kind of far and few between. When I got into jiu-jitsu and I went back to judo, he would come back with me and train and stuff like that. I mean, his body didn't recover, you know, like it did before, but yeah, he was able to still get on the mat and do these kind of things, you know. So
that's awesome. When did you get into jiu-jitsu? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I had a friend that brought over a VHS tape of these guys that just choke people out. And so he pops in the first UFC, and my dad was like, that guy's gonna win. He pointed at Hoist Gracie. And, you know, because in judo, you know, they have the tachiwaza, the throwing, but there's also that big newaza aspect also. And, you know, most fights go to the ground. And so my dad was like, once that guy gets in, he was gonna win. And I was like, no way. I was like, and so Hoist beats everybody.
Yeah.
And so then the guy's like, I got the next one. And then Hoist, you know, wins again. And so then I'm kind of like, man, this is crazy. This dude, and my dad always taught me, he said, if you want to get in, because me, I always like boxing. was like, man, no way, I'm gonna just do this and do that.
Really?
And my dad's like, you may have to take a punch, but if you can get in and clinch and have your way,
Yeah.
it's gonna be smooth sailing for you. So that's exactly what Hoist did. And so there was a side of me, excuse me, that I was like, I just wasn't convinced about Hoist.
Yeah.
Unassuming, all this. And so then I had a friend that was like, that guy has a brother. And his name was Rickson Gracie.
Yeah.
Rickson Gracie carried more muscle. In some of his fights, he had this intention. And I was like, that guy might be a little difficult. Because I was like, I even told Rickson when I first met him, I was like, no offense, but I said I could beat your brother. He kind of giggled at me, probably said I was an idiot. But so when I saw Rickson Gracie, I was like, this guy punches, knees in the back of the head, has this intention to him. I was like, damn, I like that. So I called Los Angeles and I was like, when's the next Rickson seminar? He actually was in San Diego in December of 1996. And I was like, man, this dude was like my idol, And I later started training with, Carly Gracie here in the Bay Area. But I wanted to maintain this relationship with Rickson now. Maybe we don't get into this today, but the dynamics of the Gracie family is completely distorted and dysfunctional.
Oh, okay.
It's not a happy family. There's the sides and what have you. So I maintained my relationship with Rickson and would train here in the Bay Area. And one of the things about Rickson Gracie, we just get so enamored with his technique and how he does things. But he was probably one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. Like, he just has this thought process and how he looks at life. And so after a couple of years of, going down to Los Angeles, coming back and beating up on my friends, they didn't know anything. Just like most of those guys didn't know anything in UFC 1.
Yeah.
They're knowing boxing and kung fu and karate and all these things, but when you're on the ground, you're swimming with sharks. And so, and it was all fun and games. I'm able to come back and beat up my friends and teach them these moves. And then I was just kind of like, man, I want to learn this to teach people and help people. So then when I would go down to Los Angeles, instead of just going there and training hard with the guys, I was like, maybe I would understand techniques a little better if I had to go home and show people. So then I'm like getting something from Rickson and then giving it to my friends.
Wow.
Later in life, you sit there and you gain these gifts from God. And how selfish would you be if you held on to them?
Right.
So that's kind of the circle of life, is you kind of gain this blessing and then you give it to someone else. And so I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. And so I got my blue belt, and Rickson was like, all right, I'll let you teach, Now, nowadays, if you teach as a blue belt, man, they're going to have your head.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these guys, that guy Moneybags, Daryl, that gets these black belts, from these people, they kill him. And so imagine what they would do to me as a blue belt. I did have a little clout because of Rickson's name, but I was teaching out of my garage, and then it was getting a little too big, and I was like, I might be ready to do something. And so every time I tried to convince an athletic club to let me in, they didn't buy it. They were kind of like, well, how's that going to make us money? There's too much risk. So I kept finding these dead ends. And then I had previously worked at What a Racket Athletic Club, and one of the racquetball pros there was like, all right, I'll give you a chance, but you have to be a trainer. And so at the time I was like, I want to train fighters, man. I don't want to train old people or injured people. Like, I want to get people ready to fight. And so I don't want to say I had to play the game, but it kind of helped me transition into this business person or something like that. And so my first day there working, this guy gives me a stick and a plunger, and he says, go clean the toilets. And at the time, I was already in my 30s and ego driven. So I was like, man, I could dump this dude's head in the toilet, but he's going to make me clean it.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, play the game. This is the long goal for you. Lo and behold, I ended up taking his job. So I became the director. So at that point, I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And so I was able to find a way to make the athletic club money, make myself a little bit of money. And that's kind of how I built my core. And, Hickson would come down and do seminars for me. And so it kind of helped me with my name. And you get a couple of students that start winning in tournaments and things like that. Like that was one of the things also that was hard for me because I was a little older. And they always say you can't do both. And, there's a way to do everything. But I really valued learning business because this is something that I wanted to do for myself. I couldn't see myself doing a 9-to-5, whether it be construction or going to a bank. I sat there and said, I want to help people.
Yeah.
And so I sat there and said, I'm going to forego this competition desire to focus on the business. But watching people win after you've kind of worked with them and seeing their joy, it just came really fulfilling for me. Like it almost felt like a calling. Now, competition is, only 20% of the big picture, but it's an avenue to help people learn about themselves and, all those kind of things. And so it was really great to kind of get yourself on the map. And mind you, I was a Rickson Gracie blue belt, but Charles Gracie was up the street from me. Ralph Gracie was in San Francisco. Carly Gracie was in San Francisco. Cesar Gracie was in Concord. And so I'm this blue belt literally swimming with sharks. And, I developed a really good relationship with them to where, there were days where I'd go to a seminar as a black belt and Ralph would be teaching. And we'd just be like, dude, I'm a black belt and Ralph Gracie's wearing a black belt, and so, and back in the day, they didn't take too kindly to people teaching in their area. There was a lot of people coming in to try to prove themselves to you and a lot of stuff that happened behind closed doors that, like, if there was social media back then, we could be in jail.
Okay, yeah.
Some of the stuff that went on, and so one of the things, actually, this is kind of a cool story. There's a story about Rickson fighting a professional, Japanese wrestling fighter, and it's really documented. And one day I was there training. I was there for the weekend, but then on Monday I had developed something on my hand, and it ended up being a staph infection. So me and Rickson's son, Hodgson, were training, but we both ended up getting staph infections. So I went to the house, and Rickson's like, I can't train you. He said, but I have something cool for you to watch. And so he says, this guy from Japan, wanted to challenge me. And I said, listen, there's two ways I look at this. I fight for honor, and I fight as a professional. If you want to fight me as a professional, instead of getting this clout for yourself, we'll go to a promoter, we'll agree on XYZ terms, and we'll fight. Or if that's not what you're looking for, just come to my dojo and we'll fight. So they came down to Japan, from Japan to Rickson's Academy and challenged him. So I was not there at the academy, but Rickson showed me the video. And like I said, it's really well documented. And so they come there with Japanese, television cameras and everything. And this guy says, I want to fight you. Or they said they wanted to fight Rickson, so they called Rickson. And the video starts with Rickson taping his hand, saying, there's a situation at my academy. I'm going to go check it out. So he gets there, and they say, well, we want to fight. And then his wife says, got to sign the waiver. And they said, we're not signing a waiver. And Hickson says, you have to sign the waiver. Hickson didn't really care about the waiver, but the wife had the business part of it. So this goes on for about 2 or 3 minutes. So then they said, well, if we don't sign the waiver, then you're not fighting us. Hickson said, F the waiver. Slaps him, and the fight starts. And the guy tried to fish hook Hickson's mouth, but Hickson clinched him, took him down. And Hickson hit him, didn't want to choke him out. He wanted them to see the bruising, the blood. And Hickson beat this guy to a pulp. And then he's like, okay, everyone come back in, look at him. And then they try to say that Hickson and the guys jumped him. But he later came back and gave Hickson like this honorary sword and things like that. But it was like the Wild Wild West back in the day.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. And so you know me and you see me kind of, be a little intense or have this way about me. It's because that's what we did back in the day. You've had to really kind of tone yourself, to the business aspect of things. But some fun times. And I felt very privileged to be able to sit there and watch something that, people can only talk about, or these myths.
Yeah.
And they're things that I can testify. Hickson's greatness, Hickson choking people out, being able to see things. And it was really a blessing. If you kind of look back on that journey, to be able to just be a part of something like that, it was really cool.
Wow. You definitely hear. I started in jiu-jitsu like 2017 or something maybe. I always hear like these myths and stuff. And so it's really cool to hear somebody who like lived through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a basics person, and, he was teaching cross chokes, and some of these black belts kind of looked uninterested, and he was like, well, can you do it to me? And they couldn't do it to him, and he just lined 4 or 5 guys up and just one right after the other.
Yeah.
Just his pressure and his precision, it was really nice to watch.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. When did you start jiu-jitsu exactly?
1996. I saw that first Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Yeah.
Like late to 1996, and then I called about that Hickson seminar. And so, like I said, I think it was December 7th, 1996. Fabio Santos's academy in Mission Gorge. Just went down there myself, and I was like, man, I want to learn from this guy.
Wow. So that's like almost 30 years that you've been training jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, one of the things about my jiu-jitsu journey, though, was a little difficult because I didn't really have an everyday instructor that vested in me.
Yeah.
Like, I would go there for privates, I would go there for seminars, and this, like, it's tough to retain.
Yeah.
Right? And so imagine going there and just getting 4 hours worth of content. How do I bring anything back, right? And so I had to really develop myself. And it was hard. Like I said, I felt like I was behind the learning curve, but then I would make up for it because I was a tough guy. But ultimately, the tough guy, it doesn't really help you when it's about technique. And so until I really started to value technique, and one of the things that I did learn, that instead of using strength, use leverage. I mean, that's one of the things for me when I try to apply pressure. I don't want to say I'm a weak guy, but I'm not going to sit here and try to exchange strength with somebody. I'm going to cook them. Right? We get on top of people, we kind of sink in, and then after that, we kind of go for the kill. And so I understood leverage, and instead of trying to be fast, be technical and smooth. And so that's kind of the approach that I took with everyone. You see these people that come in so gifted, and I don't want to take away anyone's physical attributes. You're this gifted, athletic young man, or that has wrestling and all those things. You're going to win, but you're going to have to come to the crossroads at some point, Because maybe someone is 6'2" and 220 also that has impeccable technique.
Right.
What's going to happen?
Right.
Or after 5 minutes, you've been through this not too long ago, after 5 minutes of a grueling match, all you have is technique and heart at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Those physical attributes don't mean anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the things that I kind of picked up on my journey that I valued. Then especially teaching women, and especially, my wife, Jane, who she was tough, but she can't be tougher than a 160-pound blue belt.
Mm-hmm.
She needed to pivot and do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I matured and developed as an instructor to try to make all this work.
Mm. Yeah. And for those, because I don't know either, like, what's this story behind meeting your wife? And, did you train together, or how did that start?
We, so at Wateraka Athletic Club, I was the fitness director, and she worked in the physical therapy department.
Oh, okay.
And so I broke my wrist on purpose for her to help me.
Got it.
And and so I used to teach boxing because selling jiu-jitsu is hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're a lifer if you buy into it,
Mm-hmm.
but the intrigue isn't there at first, unless
Right.
there's something wrong with you, right? Like,
Right.
because you've been here in the business, people come to Muay Thai and boxing.
Yeah.
All you need are your gloves, you punch something and you leave. That some people don't like that sweat and that type of closeness. And so I tried to sell her on boxing, and she said she was going to come, and then she went to some sale. And so I was like, I gave her a hard time after that. She's an amazing boxer.
Mm.
And then one day I put together an 8-woman tournament.
Really?
And so I said, hey, come watch it. And it was at the athletic club, and we had some really tough girls, and she kind of bought into it. I don't know if she bought into me more, but at that point, I just saw this really nice person, genuine person that wanted to be a part of something that I was building. And we just, got really close. And, so, and the curse for her was, I don't want anything easy because I'm dating, the sensei, or I'm married to the sensei. That's why Coach Jane is, the first one on the mat and the last one to leave. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she has one of the best work ethics because she wanted to prove, part of her personality as well. But that's kind of how our journey started.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like,
Sorry.
oh no, you're fine.
Can you do that on this or not? Or what?
What's that?
Can you escape and go grab water on your...
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Why don't I grab a sip also? This is very chill podcast. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But man, so it sounds like, man, ever since you started getting into, which by the way, that's like one of the coolest jiu-jitsu origin stories, like watching the first UFC with your dad. But ever since that because it sounds like you put everything into jiu-jitsu in the sense of like your time back when no one believed, because now everyone, jiu-jitsu is very popular, but back then nobody understood or cared about it, but you believed it, you invested everything into it. You invested everything into it in terms of it as a calling, it as a business, it is as a career. And what's really interesting is, like, what stood out to me is you went out of your way to get this really valuable information that nobody thought was valuable. And instead of keeping it to yourself, you felt this calling to give it out to other people and like carve out like purpose, meaning, and like a way to build a community around you. And also to, find your wife too. And so, that's really interesting to me. Where do you think all of that comes from?
And there's only one person that controls that, and you know this, right? And so, I mean, it becomes more apparent every day as we get older or wiser,
Yeah.
but it's God. I mean, I think it really, you know, we cross paths for a reason, you know. And in 1998, you know, even before I met my wife, I sat there and said, I want to help people. Okay, this is my calling. Almost 30 years later, you have a mat full of people getting promoted. Like it's the greatest day of their life. So to be able to sit, or this community that we built, right? Like I was doing this stuff in like 2001, and I'm not gonna say the word community is cute, right? But it's what people say today.
Yeah.
I used to tell people, if I could affect, like when I was a personal trainer, you know, at the time you're making $50 to $100 an hour, and you're like, man, I'm making $400 a day because I'm training 8 people. But that's 8 hours of my time that I could only affect 8 people. So that's great. But if I can teach these classes twice a day that 30 people are coming into, now I'm affecting 60 people's lives for the better, right? And so that was kind of my narrative. Now, I'm not going to say the money was greater or poorer than that at the time, because I was working for someone, but I believed in that. You know, just watching people, like there's this one funny story. I was teaching fitness, and this lady came in every morning, didn't say much. It wasn't you, okay? I can tease him on his own podcast. But she didn't say much. She kind of kept to herself in the back. And I kind of got on her a little bit about her effort and so forth. And after the camp, she said, can I talk to you? And I said, oh shit, what did I say? When you know me, when I'm going and I'm saying things, hey, let's go, get moving, don't be lazy, blah, blah, blah. And she just starts crying and says, I changed her life. I gave her confidence. I gave her hope. And at that point, I'm like, damn, I'm doing something. And it's the biggest high.
Yeah.
Like all through everything in life, I don't drink. I've had alcohol less than probably 3 times my whole life. Don't smoke. I can spend $60 at 7-Eleven on chocolate and shit like that.
Yeah.
That's my high. But just seeing people, you know, even yourself, you know, when you competed, I understand that, you know, you didn't get the results that you wanted, but you were so close. But I think you learned a lot about yourself that day, and you know, how we can work together and what you can do. And it's just a way to be able to touch people. And so if the community is the word that we use today, I'm proud to be able to contribute to this community. And if you want to put, you know, the icing on top, it's where I was born and raised. You know, this is my hood, you know, so I do think all of that makes for something really special.
Yeah. And you mentioned like in the beginning of that, like just kind of how all that just kind of comes from God. What's that like? Like, what was that journey with God like? Like, I don't know if you grew up in a church or you know what that looked like for you exactly. But when you say like it all comes from God, like what do you mean by that?
Well, I grew up Catholic, much like everyone, you know. I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than go to a Catholic mass, you know. My wife and I, we go, you know, my mother-in-law, they're very Catholic, very religious. So, you know, on Mother's Day or her birthday, we'll go there. I understand it a little more as an adult, but as a child, you're just like, why am I here? And then as I got older, and by no means, this is just my opinion and how I view things. Now, my mind might be distorted or anything like that, so I'm not here to offend anyone. But after a while, I felt like I was getting lectured. You know, and one of the tipping points for me was my uncle, who was a very devoted Catholic. He would go on Saturdays to Mass and do the offerings, and he would go on Sundays as well. And when he went, on the church bus trip to Reno,
Mm.
he was criticized by a priest.
Mm.
So at that point, I kind of said to myself, this just doesn't make sense. And so my wife and I started to kind of seek out Christianity. And Christianity, to me, allows me to interpret things my way and kind of seeing how it laterally translates to your life today. In a Catholic church, you're told something, and this is how it is. And to a degree, it is. But I like the fact that Christianity kind of gave me the ability to kind of write my own story. And so I always felt that I had faith. You know, you're born with faith, and then we develop this fear in life based on traumas, based on the news.
Mm.
You know, like you watch the news, the first 4 to 6 stories are negative.
Yeah.
Right? You go on social media,
Yeah.
negative, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I got to a point where I would always ask God, give me a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's very selfish for me to ask that. But faith is believing in something that you can't see that's in front of you, right? And so he did show me things.
Mm-hmm.
And if I look back on my life, my wife is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you described earlier, to be able to position myself to help so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a God,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've just had instances in my life, you know, where, you know, in 2019, we had just got back from the Worlds and we were getting ready to go to my nephew and niece's wedding. And my mom calls me and she's like, I just got ran over by a cop car.
Wow.
And it was 2 minutes from my house. And so I'm driving down the street and I see this chaos, and it's my mom. And so I make my way through. Long story short, you know, she ended up having elbow surgery and broke her ankle. Unfortunately, she kind of went into a depression, and so she's not really the same. But if she would have crossed that street 1 second sooner, she wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, in December, it was raining, they had lost power. He was going in and out of the house to charge the phones in his car. He falls.
Mm.
I get a call, we're going to the hospital, we're there till 2 a.m. And so that night, I'm like, what's the lesson in this? Like, I could sit there and be like, God, why?
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mom got hit by a car. My dad, you know, breaks his hip, lying there for 20 minutes, had to pull himself to the sign to be able to get up. My dad could have hit his head.
Mm.
And so at 2:30 in the morning, I'm sitting here thanking God that he didn't hit his head. It was only his hip.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one other funny story, you know, Coach Jane had a tough battle with COVID, one of the earlier strains. And we lived in South City. In my family home, I ended up buying it. And but in South City, especially where we live, it's foggy 362 days of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so as she started to feel better, you're just waking up to this fog and this gloominess, you know? And so we would drive to Burlingame, San Mateo, just kind of sit in a park. And I was just like, you want to move? He's like, yeah. It's daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes care of all that stuff, and I dealt with the realtor and those kind of things. And so, you know, this was in September. Our house was on the market 2 months later. So we moved in with my sister, which was a blessing to be able to have a family member, you know, bring us in. And we sold, but the market was at the worst time. COVID was still kind of up and going. We sold high, so we knew we had to buy high. And so we came back home, got our stuff, and we got to live there for another 60 days to look for a home. But at the end of the year, everything dries up in the real estate market. And so we moved back in with my sister. This time we had 2 dogs. We got Creed. We had Faith at first, and we had Creed. My sister had 2 dogs. So we got a 3-bedroom house with 2 families living in there with 4 dogs. Mm-hmm. We were there for, almost 2 months, and we got rejected almost 7 times. And on the 7th time, Jane just broke down. And every time we got rejected, God has a plan. Mm-hmm. After the 4th time, it sounds cliche, right? So I called my realtor and I said, listen, what you're doing is not working, man. And he says, well, I pride myself on this and that. And I was emotional. And I just said, listen, at the end of the day, we don't have a home. Fix it. He got offended. He fired me. And so he calls me 2 days later and he says, can we talk? So he takes me to lunch. He says, I want to work this out. And I said, I think you're a little too emotional. I felt like I was breaking up with a girl, actually. It was like really awkward. But he says, please give me a chance, Mm-hmm. And so I was open to it. What do you have to lose? So he calls me this Monday morning and he says, I found this amazing place in Alameda de los Pulgas. He goes, it was a family that, the brother and sister were split. The sister wanted to sell right away. The brother wanted to keep it. Let's just see if we can talk to him. And so it was a really nice place. But I kind of felt that, man, we couldn't afford it. And they wanted to really try to get their value for it, which you can't knock them for that. And he goes, well, I got one more place. It's like, all right. So we drive down the street and we see this place and we open it up and it just has a backyard that's almost as big as our mat space. Turnkey. Everything was done. Like, I'm not a handy guy. And so everything had to be impeccable. And I was like, there's no way we're going to get this place. And he says, the guy lives in the trailer because the place was big enough that it had a trailer in the back. He lived in the trailer, has 2 kids. He doesn't want to deal with any open houses. He's like, he just wants this. So Jane was working at the college at the time in Hayward. So she had to come from Hayward to San Mateo on her lunch break. So she had to go, because I had to get her approval. And it was kind of like she walked in, okay, let's do it. So we said, yes, we're going to take it. And then the next morning they were like, well, we want this. And this is still too good to be true, So we got the home. And at that point, God had bigger plans for us. Coach Jane, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2023. She's doing great now. So there is a God. One of the things that I pray for every day is to kind of maintain a strong spiritual connection with him. Because it's easy to pray and get what you want and just kind of like, okay, well, I need you again. And so I have my verse of the day. I try to meditate on it. I try to understand it. And, to this day, I'm striving to have a strong spiritual connection with the Lord. That's the number one thing I pray for. Then obviously I pray for good health and good mental health and all of those things. And I want all the loved ones in my life to be able to have that benefit as well. But I think that's important.
Yeah.
To be able to have that strong spiritual connection.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I mean, man, throughout all of that, I just hear, God's story in that God sustaining you through all those things, the hardships in life. And I'm really hearing like this relationship that you have with God is a very honest relationship. The way you show up is very honest. And yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I think you have to. One of the things that I learned from Jane, I had always been a busy guy. And that's kind of what held my anxiety and depression in check, because I was able to deal with chaos. I always ran 2 gyms at one time. I always had multiple things. And so I was able to kind of survive in this chaos. And so one day I kind of looked at myself and I was like, there's something wrong with you. This isn't normal to be able to just live this childhood and think that you're okay and be able to kind of suppress it by being busy.
Right.
And one of the things that Jane taught me was like, it's okay to be vulnerable. I even commented that on one of your posts. I just said vulnerability is one of the most important things, especially for us men that are alpha males. And when I was able to allow vulnerability, get help, because what did I say earlier? I was trying to help my mom and dad in their marriage at the age of 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I took on this role of Superman.
Yeah.
And it kind of went parallel with helping people and all this, but I didn't take care of myself. And so when I was able to kind of allow people to help me, but the ultimate thing that I'm still working on is surrendering as well.
Yeah.
And so it's our natural human flesh to want to control things.
Yeah.
And so each day I pray for that strength to be able to surrender.
Yeah.
And I always ask God for a sign to give me something good, but in the same breath I say, but I know you want me to work on my faith.
Yeah.
And so there has to be this give and take, not really, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's just kind of how I look at things.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And speaking of, like anxiety and depression and how that shows up in guys, like how do you think that relates to jiu-jitsu? Because I have this working theory, like from a therapy psychological standpoint, of just like guys that weren't maybe hugged a lot as a kid, maybe that's why they like jiu-jitsu, like subconsciously. I don't know, it's just like this theory that I have. But I've noticed that jiu-jitsu is very therapeutic for a lot of guys, and so do you see that like also?
I see the opposite first.
Okay.
I see the opposite first. Martial arts, you ask people why you got into martial arts, they say because I want discipline and honor. I got into martial arts because I wanted to break someone's arm. I was like, man, I'm getting into these fights. I want to have an edge. I'm tired of breaking my knuckles. And so now that pivoted quickly when I, began to teach and help people. And so when you walk into an academy, you're the nail for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? There's that saying, there's the hammer and the nail. And so when you start out, you're getting beat up and it doesn't feel good. And then you get these guys that, well, my arm hurts, but they go batshit crazy on you in training. Well, there's these excuses why they didn't win, they're injured, or all those types of things. And so that's something that's very ugly in our sport or our business that I don't like. But I think once you can kind of become a little vulnerable and accept defeat, you can kind of look at this as you and I are training. And we don't have to talk, but we're both silently trying to make each other better.
Yeah.
Trying to make us better on the mat, better as men, helping out another brother or sister, whatever it is.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I kind of honed in on that. And it's hard, right? Like as a white belt and a blue belt, you want this instant gratification. Like it feels good to get that first choke. It feels good to get that first armbar, right?
Yeah.
But man, that's just so temporary.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Hickson Gracie always said, don't get too high because when you drop, it hurts. Don't get too low because you're going to want to be so hungry to feel good again.
Yeah.
And so I think it teaches you balance. And I think it really helps you kind of understand your emotions.
Yeah.
and it really kind of teaches you, you know, who you are. One of the things that I always try to explain to people, you know, competition, and I believe competition is great for taking that 3 months to prepare yourself and sacrifice for that one day on the mat, the 6 minutes
Yeah.
of the hours of stress and all the sacrifice and the injuries and all these things.
Yeah.
And I've had guys go out there and win gold medals, and I'm sitting there hugging them with their gold medal, but they won by an advantage and they didn't want to do anything. Now, I don't want to take away from their gold medal, but they tightened up, right? Like they didn't want to open up. They just wanted to win. What did they learn about themselves that day? Then there's guys that put it out there that literally cried on my shoulder. Well, we got things to work on, you know, and so that's kind of the thing that, and it kind of always goes back to being vulnerable, surrendering an outcome based on giving it your best shot.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what becomes important down the road when it comes to being therapeutic and all these types of things, because you have to kind of understand these things. Like it can be a pill. Like there's some people that can come in and be like, man, this is great. You know, I had a crappy day at work and I trained and I felt better, and maybe they didn't grow up with issues or something like that, right? But when you try to navigate this journey to kind of find something, that's when you can kind of engage with jiu-jitsu and your training partner and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
I know I made it sound a little more difficult than what it was, but that's kind of where you can hit that sweet spot.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just like, I mean, so much of that journey of jiu-jitsu is learning how to be vulnerable, regulate your emotions, build character, and, you know, yeah, those are all like really, yeah, important things that jiu-jitsu gives us when we train. Do you have any advice for the white belt what advice do you have for the white belt that wants to start training, that wants to give it a try, but they're scared or they're too intimidated to give it a try?
Come to our academy.
Yeah, yeah,
because I will take you through this process.
yeah,
I think, you know, you have to come there and say, what's the end goal, right? Like you didn't learn how to drive in one day, you didn't learn how to walk in one day. And so you can't put these expectations on yourself.
yeah,
And like I said earlier, instant gratification is something that we search for in society today. But I just feel to just come in with an open mind and just be willing to learn.
yeah,
And just know that in 6 months, you're not going to be where you were at day one. And if you can give back to that person that's on day one, something is going to come back to you.
right,
You know, and that's just kind of really how it works. You know, it's just kind of like, and one of the things that I see here at the academy is when class is over and I'm watching you guys interact with each other. Like that's beautiful to me. I can't be in every conversation. I can't help everyone, but everyone that's talking to one another, it's their journey,
yeah,
their perspective, it's their flavor of Baskin Robbins of jiu-jitsu, of how they're able to kind of portray it to someone else. And so to me, I think as a white belt coming in, knowing you are going to take your lumps, and there is guys that are wound up differently, and you might have to accept the fact that that person is just kind of built that way. But all in all, our goal here is to just make each other better.
yeah,
To make each other better.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, and what advice would you have for the purple belt or brown belt who has been training for years, or and then they're not getting younger and the injuries accumulate or life happens? Like, do you have any advice for those guys or women who are like, who are struggling to like, you know, maintain consistency or showing up.
You don't have to prove yourself every day. Like that's something that I really accepted, having tough training partners. Like, you know, there's these two guys in particular, like John Devine. He was a wrestler from Bakersfield, fought MMA, one of our black belts, 6'4", 260 pounds. You got AZ, who's almost 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds. Even though I had better technique than them, our training sessions were fun because we'd go at it. And I would leave with this high. But then the next morning I'd wake up with this knee injury or this shoulder injury. And I was, I was 10 years older than them, but my ego wouldn't let me accept that. And then one day I came in and I shook hands and I was like, started, and I was like, I don't have it today. So I said, I'm going to allow myself to become vulnerable, and I'm going to not let them smash me, but I have to accept the fact that they're smashing me. I let go. I surrendered. So in that time, I have a saying in jiu-jitsu, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'm getting smashed by these 6'4", 250 pound tough guys. And so I'm there, maybe I get my arm kimura'd or something along those lines, checkmate, come back. But as I'm under there, I'm saying to myself, if this guy shifts his weight to the right once, I'm getting underneath him. Or if he does this, I'm doing this. And so I could have a 10-minute round and get smashed for 9 minutes and 30 seconds. But if I can get on top in 30 seconds, that was a victory to me. Right. Because in that moment, I didn't fight anything. Like you just can't all the time. You can't fight everything. Just like in life, you can't control everything. So I think for that brown belt and purple belt that have those kind of injuries, you have to kind of play it a little smarter. Put yourself in a position where you can become comfortable, but also survive. Work on your breathing. You don't have to explode out of everything. And at that point, that's where my jiu-jitsu went to the next level. Because then I was able to sit there and feel the weight distribution. I was able to kind of feel the energy. And you know that saying, once again, is cliche, leave your ego at the door. It is true. Because I have no shame in tapping out to tough guys or even yourself, you know. And even as a coach, I can sit there and say, well, I was waiting to see if Daniel was going to do that. But you earned it. Like I'd never have a problem saying you've earned something. And so I truly believe if you're kind of in that rut, you know, with the injury aspect, you have to be a little smarter. You know, you don't always have to win. Maybe learn. And as far as getting better, you got to be able to kind of sit there and just see things. You know, Michael Jordan, he said, basketball became easy for me when it became in slow motion. Jiu-jitsu became easy for me when it was in slow motion. That's why I always kind of tell you, slow down a little bit, cook them. Not everything has to be a scramble. In 5 years, you're going to be like, damn, that dude was onto something.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that starting now. Yeah. That's great. I guess I just had like one like last fun question, I guess. You know, you there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened back in the day. Any crazy stories that happened in this gym or?
I mean, there was an incident.
We don't have to get into it too. We can.
No, I mean, I'm an open book. I mean, when someone comes into the academy, we want to test them not just based on, you know, how tough they are, but if they're going to be a fit here, right? And so there's always been a pecking order of who would train with the new guy. We would usually go with someone that's one belt below, and then after that, it would move on to someone that might be smaller or something along those lines. And so one day, some friends came in, and we were, kind of doing some drills, and this guy wrist locks someone during like a drill, like a thing, and I still struggle with footlocks to a degree, because I came from an era of jiu-jitsu where, I feel like if you're attacking feet, you're kind of taking away your ability to learn passing and those kind of things. Now, I've digressed on that a little bit, and I see the value in it. And of course, I have to teach my students that. But after that happened, it was the wild, wild west. AZ turned the guy into an accordion. The wall had to be sheetrocked after. It was...
Oh, okay.
I'm not like proud of those kind of things,
Sure.
but it kind of took on a life of its own.
Right.
It kind of took on a life of its own. And I don't want to sit here and gloat as a proud instructor, but it was a culture that we built, kind of like part of the conversation we had off camera, before we started. It was a way to kind of provide some law and order without it having to be me.
Yeah.
Because the sensei beats up the new guy, I'm a jerk. Or, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to kind of have an academy to where we were able to regulate things on our own. And like I said, things just kind of took a life on its own that day, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions that, I had. It was really an honor and privilege to kind of hear everything from your background, your origin stories, how you pretty much dedicated your entire life in some way or another to jiu-jitsu, and what jiu-jitsu has given you back, and kind of how God has guided you in your calling and your community, and your marriage, and sustaining you through life tragedies. So I really appreciate this. Is there anything you want to talk about, or?
No, I just think in parting, my journey, I believed in myself. And I had people that trusted me, whether it be friends or someone new that came in and trusted me. And I had a stubbornness that I wanted to make it work. But once again, I had it all backwards. It was because I had faith, right? Like, I had faith in taking a chance on this sport that no one gave a chance to, that wasn't ideal for the population, but I believed in myself, but I had faith. And as I was going through it, I didn't know. I was just so determined, but it was my faith that kind of led me to have that motivation, that stubbornness, and that desire. And so, just in parting, I just feel that people, really should believe in God or something or someone, and immediately believe in themselves. And it's always good to give. I heard something the other day that, God gives what he has to others, and he watches that come back. And if you give what you don't have to others, you get more. I don't want to live my life keeping score of that. But if you're able to, like, it's funny, Coach Jane and I, some guy walks in here. You realize when you ask me a question, it opens up Pandora's box. Like, a bunch of shit just comes out, okay?
It's fine.
So Coach Jane and I were here, and this guy comes in and he's like, "Hey, you want steaks?" And I was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And so we buy these 8 nice ribeye steaks from this guy, which was very legit. He had a company. As Coach Jane's talking to the guy, I went out to his van and I start looking around to make sure that this guy wasn't, serial killer or anything. And so we ended up buying these steaks, and then we had some steaks dedicated to some people that we had said, "Hey, we want you to try these steaks." And then this person came over and then this person was going to stop by, and we were kind of like, well, man, maybe we don't have enough steaks. And we're just like, who cares? Like God says, if you give everything that you have, it's just better that way. And the minute we put God's word into our being, it helped make the decision super easy. And so, you know, I have a saying every day. I ask God to make sure that my actions align with his word. Do I fall short every day? You better believe it. But at night, I always ask God to make sure that my heart aligns with your heart.
Yeah.
If I can strive to be a child of the Lord, I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Coach. I appreciate this. Thank you for sharing everything you shared in your time. Yeah.
no, I had a good time. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, it was a great way to connect with you, and I think it's going to help us on the mat as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Coach.
All right,
Appreciate
buddy.
it.
For sure. Thanks.